The Velkar resumed their attack exactly 12 hours after the deadline. Lagos burned first, the ancient city turning to ash in minutes. Cairo followed, then São Paulo. The aliens were methodical, destroying cities in alphabetical order as if working through a simple checklist. Millions died with each strike, but while the world burned, 6 human fighters climbed toward space at impossible speeds. Jake felt the ship respond to his thoughts before he even consciously formed them. The neural interface was strange, like having a new sense he had never known existed. He could feel the vacuum of space around him, the radiation from the sun, the gravitational pull of Earth below. Most importantly, he could feel the enemy ships ahead. Valkyrie Squadron, enemy fighters incoming. Nicole's voice came through clear and steady. She was flying Valkyrie 2, keeping pace with Jake's ship. Count his 40 targets, closing fast. Jake pulled up the tactical display in his mind. The Velkar fighters appeared as red dots, spreading out in a standard attack formation. They were bigger than human jets with thick armor and powerful shields. They had been designed to crush any resistance. All ships weapons free, Jake commanded. Show them what surprise looks like. The Velkar pilots had destroyed thousands of human aircraft over the past day. They expected these new ships to die just as easily. They approached with casual confidence, their weapons charging up for easy kills. They never got the chance to fire. Nicole's fighter moved first, accelerating so fast the Velkar pilots couldn't track it. Her plasma lance cannons fired, bright beams of superheated energy that punched through alien shields like they weren't there. 3 enemy fighters exploded in rapid succession, torn apart by weapons they had no defense against. Splash 3, Nicole reported, her voice still calm. She was already lining up her next target. Chris Palmer flew Valkyrie 3, weaving through enemy fire with impossible grace. The neural interface let him react faster than any normal human could. He saw a missile coming, thought about moving left, and the ship responded instantly. The missile passed through empty space where he had been a microsecond before. His quantum torpedoes launched, small weapons that phased through normal space. They passed through the Velkar shields as if the shields didn't exist, then detonated inside the enemy hulls. 4 more fighters exploded, their pilots never understanding what had killed them. Danny Cruz and Sophie Grant worked together, their ships moving in perfect coordination. They had trained together for only a few hours, but the neural interface let them share tactical data instantly. They thought and fought as one mind controlling 2 ships. They bracketed a group of 6 Velkar fighters, coming at them from above and below simultaneously. Their weapons fired together, catching the enemy in a crossfire with no escape. 6 more explosions lit up the darkness. Frank Dodson was the oldest pilot in the squadron, over 60, but his experience showed. He didn't make flashy moves or take unnecessary risks. He simply positioned himself perfectly and fired with machine-like precision. 1 shot, 1 kill. Then he moved to the next target. Then the next. In less than 3 minutes, 40 Velkar fighters had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris and frozen bodies. Not a single human ship had taken significant damage. On the bridge of his command ship, Commander Zalen stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 40 fighters gone, 40 of his best pilots dead, and he had no idea how. Analysis, he demanded. His tactical officer worked frantically at the controls. Sir, the human ships are using technology we've never seen. They're faster than anything in our database. Their weapons penetrate our shields, and their pilots are reacting faster than should be possible for organic beings. Zalen's clawed hand curled into a fist. How did they develop such technology? Our intelligence said they were primitive. Perhaps, his second-in-command said carefully, we underestimated them. Launch all fighters, Zalen ordered, his voice hard with anger. Every ship. I want those human craft destroyed, and charge the main weapons. If we can't control this planet, we'll make sure nobody can. On Earth, billions watched the battle on every screen. The footage was grainy and distant, captured by satellites and telescopes, but everyone could see the explosions. They could see human ships fighting back. For the first time since the invasion began, people felt something other than terror. They felt hope. In the command center under Colorado, General Peter Grant watched the tactical feed with satisfaction mixed with worry. They're doing well, but they can't keep this up. The Velkar have hundreds more fighters. The next wave of Valkyries is almost ready, Amy reported. She had stopped crying hours ago, her grief hardening into something stronger. 10 more ships will launch within the hour. 20 more after that. It won't be enough, Peter said quietly. Not against their whole fleet. Then what do we do? Peter pulled up another screen, this one showing factories across the planet. In China, Russia, America, Europe, everywhere, production lines were being retooled. The specifications from the Prometheus project had been shared with every nation. Humanity's entire industrial capacity was being converted to one purpose. We build faster than they can kill us, Peter said, and we make them pay for every ship they destroy. In space, the second wave of Velkar fighters engaged Jake's squadron. This time there were 200 enemy ships, swarming from every direction. The human pilots split up, each taking a different vector, forcing the enemy to divide their attention. Jake's ship shook as enemy fire finally found him. His shields flared bright, absorbing the impact, but the power levels dropped. He couldn't take many more hits like that. Squadron, they're trying to overwhelm us with numbers, he called out. Stay mobile. Don't let them pin you down. A Velkar fighter came straight at him, weapons blazing. Jake dove, rolled, came up behind it, and fired. The enemy ship exploded, but 3 more took its place. He destroyed those 2, but his shield levels kept dropping. Valkyrie lead, this is Control. Lisa's voice came through. 10 new fighters launching now. Hang on. The reinforcements arrived just in time. 10 fresh Valkyrie fighters, their pilots newly trained but eager, joined the fight. The tide of battle shifted again, but Commander Zalen had finished charging his main weapon. The massive cannon at the front of his command ship began to glow with accumulated energy. It was called the World Breaker, and it lived up to its name. One shot could crack a planet's crust, making it uninhabitable for thousands of years. Target their homeworld, Zalen commanded. If we can't conquer them, we'll at least eliminate the threat. Jake saw the energy build up on his sensors and felt his blood turn cold. Control, they're charging a planet-killer weapon. How long until it fires? Lisa's response came back immediately, her voice tight with fear. 8 minutes. Jake, if that weapon fires, Earth is finished. Then we stop it, Jake said simply. He switched to the squadron channel. All ships form on me. We're going for the command ship. That's suicide, Frank said, his usual calm cracking slightly. Their point defense will tear us apart. Maybe, Jake agreed. But if we don't try, everyone dies anyway. Who's with me? The response came without hesitation. All 16 pilots confirmed, their voices overlapping. They all knew this might be a one-way trip. They all came anyway. The Valkyrie fighters turned as one and burned toward the massive command ship. The space between them and their target filled with weapons fire, thousands of shots from dozens of defensive guns. The Velkar were determined to protect their flagship. Danny's ship took a direct hit. The young pilot had just enough time to whisper a curse before his fighter exploded. 2 of the newer pilots followed seconds later, their ships torn apart by the defensive fire. Keep going, Jake ordered, his voice hard. Don't let them die for nothing. They were halfway to the target when Sophie's ship took multiple hits. Her shields collapsed and her systems went offline. The last thing Jake heard from her was a calm farewell before her communication cut out. Closer now. Frank's fighter lost power, drifting on momentum alone but still heading toward the target. 4 more pilots died, their ships disintegrating under the concentrated fire. Jake's own ship was badly damaged, alarms screaming in his ears. Beside him, Nicole's fighter was in even worse shape, missing half a wing and trailing atmosphere from a hull breach. Together? She asked over the private channel. Together, Jake confirmed. They were only 1,000 kilometers out now. The Worldbreaker cannon glowed like a small sun, ready to fire in less than a minute. Behind it, Earth hung in space, blue and beautiful and completely helpless. All ships fire everything, Jake commanded. Now. The surviving Valkyrie fighters unleashed their full arsenals. Torpedoes phased through space. Plasma lances carved through armor, and for one brilliant moment, human technology matched alien power shot for shot. The torpedoes hit first, detonating inside the Worldbreaker cannon. The accumulated energy had nowhere to go but inward. Secondary explosions rippled through the command ship as the weapon tore itself apart. Commander Zalen saw his bridge screens go white. He had just enough time to realize he had failed before the explosion consumed everything. The massive alien command ship broke in 2, both halves beginning a slow, fiery descent toward Earth's atmosphere. The remaining Velkar fleet, suddenly leaderless and facing an enemy that refused to die, did. News of the defeat traveled fast through the Velkar Dominion. For 300 years, their fleets had been unstoppable. They had conquered 47 star systems, crushed rebellions, and made examples of any species that dared resist. Now a primitive world they had dismissed as easy prey had destroyed 2 of their fleets. The Dominion Council met an emergency session on their homeworld, a planet of red stone and thin atmosphere located 50 light-years from Earth. The councilors argued for days about how to respond. Some wanted to leave the humans alone, to cut their losses and move on. Others demanded total war. High Counselor Vrax made the final decision. He was ancient, over 200 years old with scales that had turned almost black with age. He had overseen the conquest of 20 worlds personally. The humans have proven dangerous, he told the council. But if we retreat now, if we show weakness, every species we rule will see it. Rebellions will spread across the Dominion. No, we must crush Earth completely. Send the 9th Armada. Send everything we have in this sector. Make an example of them that will be remembered for 1,000 years. The order went out. 500 warships, the largest fleet the Dominion had assembled in decades, began the journey to Earth. They would arrive in 6 weeks. On Earth. Those 6 weeks passed in a blur of construction and preparation. The planet's factories ran 24 hours a day, producing ships and weapons at a pace that would have been impossible in peacetime. But this wasn't peacetime. This was survival. Jake walked through one of the massive construction facilities in China, watching workers assemble Valkyrie fighters on automated lines. The process that had taken weeks initially now took only hours. Humanity had learned fast. We're producing 30 new fighters per day now, the facility manager told him. She was a woman named Lynn, who had been building cars before the invasion. Another week and we'll hit 50 per day. The destroyer yards are hitting similar numbers. What about pilots? Jake asked. Training centers on every continent. We have more volunteers than we can process. Colonel Morrison, I lost my entire family in Beijing during the first attack. Everyone here has lost someone. We won't stop building until Earth is safe. Jake nodded slowly, understanding the rage that drove her and millions like her. The Velkar had created something they couldn't destroy. They had united humanity and given them a reason to fight that went beyond politics or territory. This was about species survival. Nicole found him an hour later watching new pilots train in the simulators. You need to rest, she said. You haven't slept in 2 days. Neither have you. That's different. I'm younger. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Both of them had seen too much death to smile easily anymore. Jake, the scouts are reporting the new Velkar fleet is huge. Bigger than anything they've sent before. How many ships? 500 capital vessels. Thousands of fighters. They're not taking chances this time. Jake was quiet for a moment. Then neither can we. What's our fleet strength? 800 Valkyrie fighters operational with another 200 in final testing. 40 Hammer-class destroyers. The Sword of Terra and 5 of her sister ships, the Guardian, the Defender, the Liberty, the Justice, and the Victory. 6 capital ships against 500, Jake said. I've faced worse odds. No, you haven't, Nicole said flatly. Nobody has. Jake, we need something more. Some kind of advantage. She was right, and Jake knew it. The human fleet was impressive for something built in weeks, but it might not be enough. They needed an edge. He found that edge in an unlikely place. Dr. Lisa Hayes had continued working on alien technology even during the battles. While others focused on building more ships, she had been studying the Velkar themselves, trying to understand how their systems worked. Their ships are networked, she explained to Jake and General Grant in a secure briefing. Every vessel in their fleet is connected through a quantum communication system. It lets them coordinate perfectly, react instantly to threats. It's one of their biggest advantages. And, Peter asked, and any network can be hacked. I've been studying the wreckage from their command ship. I think I can create a virus, something that will spread through their entire fleet when they connect to engage us. What would it do? Jake asked, 'cause chaos. Random system failures, sensor glitches, communication disruptions. It won't destroy them, but it will confuse them, slow them down, make them vulnerable. Peter leaned forward. How long to build this virus? It's already built. I just need a delivery system. A ship would have to get close to their fleet, close enough to transmit the virus into their network. A suicide mission, Jake said. Not necessarily, Lisa argued. A small ship fast and stealthy could get in and out before they react. I'll do it, Jake said immediately. No, Peter said firmly. We need you commanding the fleet. Someone else has to make the delivery. The debate continued, but in the end, the person who volunteered was someone unexpected. Frank Henderson, the oldest pilot in the fleet, stepped forward. "I'm 63 years old," he said calmly. "I've lived a full life. These kids you're training, they deserve a chance at theirs. Give me a fast ship and good shields. I'll get the virus into their system." They gave him the fastest Valkyrie fighter they had, modified with additional stealth systems and the best shields human technology could create. The ship was renamed Hope, because that's what Frank would be carrying. The Velkar 9th Armada arrived at the edge of the solar system exactly on schedule. Grand Admiral Velroth commanded from his flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Eternal Conqueror. He had learned from the previous defeats, studied the human tactics, prepared his fleet for every contingency he could imagine. "All ships, maintain formation," he ordered. "Deploy scout ships to probe their defenses." We advanced slowly and carefully. The humans are clever, but cleverness cannot defeat overwhelming force. On Earth, the evacuation was complete. Everyone who could be moved had been taken to underground shelters. The great cities were empty, their streets silent and waiting. Every military asset humanity possessed was in space, ready for the battle that would decide everything. Jake stood on the bridge of the Sword of Terra, surrounded by his command crew. The neural interface connected him to the great ship. Let him feel every system, every weapon, every person aboard. Behind him, the rest of humanity's fleet waited in formation. "All ships report ready," Amy said from communications. "Fighter wings are deployed. Destroyers are in position. The other capital ships are on station." "Good," Jake said. He opened a channel that connected him to every human ship, every pilot and crew member. "This is Colonel Morrison. You all know what's at stake. That fleet out there came to finish what they started. They want to wipe out humanity, make us a footnote in their history books. Are we going to let them?" The response came back as a roar from thousands of throats across hundreds of ships. The sound of humans who refused to die quietly. "That's what I thought," Jake said, his voice hard as steel. "All ships, advance. Let's show them that hell has nothing on human fury." The fleet moved forward, 800 fighters swarming ahead of the larger ships, destroyers flanking the capital vessels, the Sword of Terra leading from the front. They looked small compared to the Velkar Armada, like children facing giants. But humans had been fighting giants since the dawn of their species. And humans had always won. Frank Henderson flew alone ahead of the fleet, his modified fighter slipping through space with its stealth systems engaged. He could see the Velkar fleet on his sensors, massive and intimidating. His hands were steady on the controls despite his age. He had been in dangerous situations before, had survived 3 wars before this one, but he had never felt as focused as he did now. "Frank, you're approaching their sensor range." Lisa's voice came through his comm. "Upload sequence is ready. You just need to get within 1,000 kilometers of any of their ships." "Understood," Frank replied. "See you on the other side, Doc." He pushed the fighter to maximum speed, racing toward the enemy fleet. The stealth systems kept him hidden, but they wouldn't last forever. He just needed a few more minutes. A Velkar patrol ship appeared ahead of him, its sensors sweeping space. Frank adjusted his course, flying straight toward it. 500 kilometers, 400, 300, the patrol ship's alarms triggered. They had detected something, even if they couldn't see it clearly. Frank didn't care. He was close enough. He activated the transmission, felt the virus upload into the Velkar network. It happened in microseconds. The alien quantum communication system spreading the virus to every ship in the fleet before they could react. Then Frank turned his fighter around and ran for home as fast as his ship could fly. Behind him, the Velkar fleet began to experience strange malfunctions. Navigation systems reported false positions. Weapons targeting became erratic. Communications between ships filled with static and errors. It wasn't catastrophic, but it was enough. Grand Admiral Velroth stared at his malfunctioning displays in confusion and growing anger. "What's happening?" "Engineering report." "Sir, we're detecting corrupted data in the network. It's spreading through the entire fleet. Some kind of attack, impossible. How did they penetrate our systems?" But Jake Morrison didn't give him time to figure it out. The human fleet struck while the Velkar were still trying to understand what had gone. The Velkar fleet retreated to the outer solar system, gathering near Jupiter where they thought they would be safe. They regrouped, repaired their damaged ships, and waited for reinforcements. They had learned to respect human fighters, but they still believed in their ultimate victory. After all, they had numbers, experience, and 300 years of successful conquest. They were about to learn that time was not on their side. On Earth, something remarkable was happening. The planet that had been divided by borders, languages, and old hatreds had unified completely. Chinese factories worked alongside American engineers. Russian scientists shared data with European researchers. African nations contributed resources. Asian countries provided manufacturing expertise. And South American facilities focused on raw material processing. The entire planet had become one massive war machine. General Peter Grant coordinated the global effort from his command center, working 20-hour days on coffee and determination. His hair had gone completely white in the 3 weeks since the invasion, but his mind was sharper than ever. "Status report," he said to the room. Amy stepped forward with her tablet. She had been promoted twice since the invasion began, not because of politics, but because she was good at her job. "Sir, we now have 230 Valkyrie fighters operational. Another 100 are completing trials today. The Hammer-class destroyers are also ready." "Destroyers?" Peter raised an eyebrow. "I thought those weren't due for another month." "The Chinese pushed their manufacturing capacity beyond what we thought possible. We have 12 capital ships now, sir. They're smaller than the alien dreadnoughts, but they pack a serious punch." Peter allowed himself a small smile. "What about pilots and crews?" "More volunteers than we can use. Everyone wants a chance to hit back." It was true. Jake Morrison had been training new pilots almost non-stop since the first battle. Young men and women from every country lined up, knowing they might not survive but desperate to defend their world. The neural interface was difficult, requiring a certain type of mind that could handle the connection. About 1 in 10 candidates could do it. Jake pushed them hard, harder than any peacetime training would allow, because there was no time for gentle learning. Those who survived the training became something new. They weren't just pilots anymore. They were weapons. Their minds merged with machines built from technology humans barely understood. Nicole had been promoted to squadron leader after recovering from her injuries. She stood in front of 30 new pilots, all of them young and nervous. "Listen carefully," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen real combat. "The neural interface is going to feel strange. You'll want to fight it. Don't let it happen. Let the ship become part of you. The pilots who died in the first battles, most of them died because they fought the connection. The ones who survived learned to trust it." One of the new pilots raised his hand. He was barely 20 with red hair and freckles. "Ma'am, is it true you destroyed 12 enemy fighters in the first battle?" 14, Nicole corrected. "But I also got lucky." "Luck won't save you. Training will. Instinct will. Now get in your cockpits and show me you deserve to be here." In orbit around the moon, construction crews worked on humanity's greatest achievement. The Sword of Terra was massive, longer than 3 aircraft carriers placed end to end. It had been built in secret on the lunar surface, where low gravity and secrecy made the impossible merely difficult. Dr. Lisa Hayes floated in the zero gravity of the construction bay, checking the final systems. She was exhausted, having worked almost continuously for 3 weeks, but the ship was ready. "The reactor is stable," she reported to General Grant over the comlink. "All weapon systems are green. The slipstream drive is calibrated. She's everything we hoped she would be." "What about the crew?" Peter asked. 15,000 volunteers, all trained. Colonel Morrison will command." Jake stood on the bridge of the Sword of Terra, looking at the stations surrounding him. The ship was designed to be controlled through a combination of traditional methods and neural interfaces. The command crew wore the interface crowns, their minds linked to the ship's systems. He could feel the massive vessel around him, feel its power waiting to be unleashed. It was nothing like the small fighter he had flown in the first battle. This was a ship designed to stand against entire fleets, to protect Earth no matter what came through the darkness. "Sir, incoming transmission from the enemy fleet," Lieutenant Amy said. She had been transferred to the Sword of Terra as communications officer. "It's being broadcast to the whole planet." A new face appeared on the screen. This Velkar was older than Commander Zalen had been, with more scars and harder eyes. His scales were marked with symbols that indicated high rank. "Humans of Earth," the alien said, his voice cold and certain. "I am Grand Admiral Velroth of the 5th Conquest Fleet. I have 500 ships under my command. more than enough to finish what was started. You have shown courage, but courage means nothing against superior force. Surrender now and accept merciful terms. Resist, and I will personally ensure your species is remembered only as a warning to others. The transmission ended. Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were young and old, men and women from every country and culture. Every single one of them wore the same expression. Not fear, not uncertainty. Pure focused determination. Opinions? Jake asked calmly. His executive officer, a former Russian submarine commander named Victor, spoke first. I believe the Admiral's threat assessment is flawed. He thinks we're the same species that was attacked 3 weeks ago. He's wrong. Agreed, Amy added. Our intelligence shows their fleet is powerful, but they're not expecting what we have now. They think we're still desperate and weak. Jake nodded slowly. Tactical, what's our fleet strength? 230 Valkyrie fighters, 12 Hammer-class destroyers, and this ship, the tactical officer reported. She was a young woman from India named Priya, with a gift for three-dimensional thinking. We're outnumbered roughly 2-to-1 in capital ships, but our fighters give us numerical advantage in small craft. Then let's use that advantage, Jake said. He opened a channel to General Grant. Sir, requesting permission to launch a preemptive strike. There was a pause. Peter understood what Jake was really asking. Permission to take the war to the enemy, to hit them before they reached Earth. It was risky. If they failed, Earth would be defenseless. Permission granted, Peter said finally. But Jake, if this goes wrong, there's no backup plan. This is everything we have. Understood, sir. We won't let you down. The order went out across every human military facility. Operation Righteous Fury was a go. Every ship, every fighter, every weapon humanity had built would launch together in one massive strike. The Velkar fleet sat in orbit around Jupiter, confident and ready. Grand Admiral Velroth reviewed the intelligence reports on human capabilities, noting that they had built more ships than expected but still far fewer than his own fleet. They will try to defend their homeworld, he said to his officers. We will crush them there, where they have nowhere to run. Admiral, sensors are detecting multiple slipstream signatures, his tactical officer reported. Something is approaching fast. How many contacts? 242, sir. No, wait, more are appearing. Final count is 250 vessels heading directly for us. Velroth felt a chill run down his spine. That was nearly every combat-capable ship the humans had. They weren't waiting to defend. They were attacking. Battle stations, he ordered. All fighters launch. Prepare to engage. The two fleets met in the space between Jupiter and Mars. The Velkar forces spread out in their traditional formation, designed to bring overwhelming firepower to bear from multiple angles. It had worked on dozens of worlds. It didn't work against humans who had nothing left to lose. The Valkyrie fighters didn't approach cautiously. They slammed into the Velkar formation like a hammer striking glass, their pilots pushing their ships and themselves to the absolute limit. Nicole led her squadron in a devastating attack run on a Velkar carrier, their torpedoes turning the massive ship into a fireball. Splash one carrier, she reported, already selecting her next target. All wings, keep the pressure on. Don't give them time to think. The Hammer-class destroyers followed, their railguns firing tungsten slugs at incredible velocities, each impact hit with the force of a small nuclear weapon. Colonel Frank Henderson commanded the destroyer Retribution, having survived his crash in the first battle to lead surface ship operations. All batteries, continuous fire, Frank ordered calmly as his ship shook from enemy hits. Target their command ships. Cut off their coordination. The Sword of Terra drove straight into the heart of the enemy formation, its massive size making it a target, but its shields and armor letting it absorb damage that would have destroyed smaller ships. Jake watched the tactical display, saw his ships engaging across a battlefield millions of kilometers wide, and made split-second decisions that affected thousands of lives. Forward batteries, focus fire on that dreadnought, he commanded. Flanking destroyers cover our advance. Fighter wings keep their small craft off us. The battle raged for hours. Ships exploded on both sides, filling space with debris and frozen bodies. The virus worked better than anyone had hoped. Throughout the Velkar fleet, systems failed at random. Weapons locked up, then fired without command. Shields flickered on and off. Ships reported friendly vessels as enemies, leading to confusion and friendly fire. The perfect coordination that had made the Dominion fleets unstoppable was shattered. And into that chaos, humanity struck with everything they had. Nicole led the first fighter wave, 800 Valkyries diving into the enemy formation like vengeful angels. The Velkar fighters launched to intercept, but without proper coordination they were just targets. Human pilots, minds merged with their ships through the neural interface, moved with perfect precision while the enemy stumbled. "All wings, pick your targets," Nicole commanded, her voice steady despite flying at speeds that would have killed unmodified humans. "Remember your training. Fast, accurate, deadly." Her squadron alone destroyed 20 enemy fighters in the first 2 minutes. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out hundreds of times. The Velkar had numbers, but the virus had taken away their ability to use those numbers effectively. The Hammer-class destroyers came next, their railguns firing continuously. Each tungsten slug crossed millions of kilometers in seconds, hitting with terrible force. The destroyer Liberty scored a direct hit on a Velkar cruiser's reactor, the explosion bright enough to be seen from Earth. Captain Victor commanded the Liberty, his submarine warfare experience translating well to space combat. "Target the damaged ships," he ordered his weapons officer. "Finish what the fighters started. Don't give them time to recover." On the Sword of Terra, Jake watched the tactical display with the cold focus of someone who knew this battle would decide everything. His mind, connected to the ship's systems, processed information faster than should be possible. He saw patterns in the chaos, weaknesses in the enemy formation. "Tactical. I want a firing solution on that dreadnought cluster," he said, highlighting 3 enemy capital ships that had moved too close together. "Main cannon, maximum power." Priya worked quickly at her station. "Solution locked, sir. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The Sword of Terra's main weapon was a plasma lance cannon scaled up to capital ship size. When it fired, the beam was visible across the entire solar system, a line of pure energy that connected the human flagship to its targets. The 3 Velkar dreadnoughts tried to raise shields, tried to evade, but they were too slow and too confused. The beam punched through the first ship, its armor meaningless against that much concentrated power. It continued through the second, then the third, leaving all 3 vessels crippled and dying. Secondary explosions rippled through their hulls as reactors went critical. Grand Admiral Velroth felt his flagship shake from an impact. He grabbed his command console to steady himself, his clawed hands leaving marks in the metal. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically to restore systems that kept failing. "Status report," he demanded. "Sir, we've lost contact with 3 dreadnought groups. The virus has spread to all our systems. Engineering is trying to purge it, but every time they isolate it, it reappears somewhere else. How many ships have we lost?" The tactical officer checked his malfunctioning display. "At least 70 capital ships confirmed destroyed. Fighter losses are over 60%. Sir, we're losing." Velroth stared at the screen showing the battle. The humans were everywhere, their smaller numbers meaning nothing when his fleet couldn't coordinate. He had spent decades studying warfare, had commanded fleets in dozens of successful campaigns. He knew when a battle was lost, but he also knew what surrender would mean. The Dominion would see him as a failure, would execute him for incompetence. His only choice was to fight until either the humans died or he did. "All ships full assault," he ordered, ramming speed if necessary. "If we're going to die here, we'll take as many of them with us as possible." Jake saw the enemy formation change, watched as the Velkar ships began a desperate charge toward his fleet. It was the action of someone with nothing left to lose. Dangerous but also predictable. "All ships pull back to defensive positions," he ordered. "Let them come to us. Destroyers prepare torpedo spreads. Fighters hit their flanks. Capital ships concentrate fire on their lead elements." The Velkar charge met a wall of human fire. Torpedoes streaked through space, each one phasing through shields to detonate inside enemy hulls. Plasma lances carved through armor. Railgun slugs hit with devastating force. Fighter squadrons swarmed isolated Velkar ships like wolves bringing down prey. Frank Henderson made it back to the human fleet, his ship damaged but flying. He landed on the Sword of Terra's flight deck and was immediately surrounded by medics and engineers. But he waved them off looking for Jake. "Did it work?" he asked when he found the colonel in the command center. "See for yourself," Jake said, gesturing at the tactical display. Frank watched the battle for a moment, saw the Velkar fleet being systematically destroyed, and smiled. "Good, that's real good." The battle raged for another 6 hours. It wasn't easy and it wasn't cheap. Humanity lost 200 fighters and 8 destroyers. The Guardian took critical damage and had to withdraw. Thousands of human crew members died in explosions or from life support failures. But the Velkar lost much more. By the time Grand Admiral Velroth finally gave the order to retreat, his fleet had been reduced from 500 ships to less than 100. Those survivors were damaged, their crews demoralized. Their coordination still broken by the virus that continued to plague their systems. "Full retreat," Velroth said quietly, his voice heavy with defeat. "All remaining ships fall back to the Dominion staging area." But Jake Morrison wasn't finished. He opened a channel that broadcast to every Velkar ship in range. "This is Colonel Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. You came to our world. You murdered our people. You thought we would be easy to conquer. Now you know better. Return to your Dominion. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that Earth is off limits. Tell them that if they ever come back, we won't just defend ourselves. We'll come for them." The message was clear, and every Velkar who heard it understood. The humans weren't just defending anymore. They were threatening. The prey had become the predator. The surviving Velkar ships jumped to faster-than-light travel, fleeing the solar system and leaving their dead behind. The wreckage of hundreds of ships floated in space, silent monuments to arrogance and miscalculation. On Earth, people emerged from their shelters to see the sun again. They looked up at the sky, knowing that somewhere beyond those blue heavens humanity had won. The celebrations lasted for days. Every city that still stood, every town and village erupted in joy and relief. But in the command centers and military facilities, the celebration was more muted. They had won, yes, but at a terrible cost. Major cities around the world were still ruins. Billions had died in the initial attacks. The victory was real, but so was the grief. General Peter Grant stood in front of the UN Assembly addressing representatives from every nation. He looked older, worn down by months of constant warfare, but his voice was still strong. "We've proven we can defend ourselves," he said. "But defense isn't enough anymore. The Velkar know where we are now. Other species know we exist. We can't hide on this one planet and hope to be left alone. We need to expand, to explore, to establish ourselves as a power in this galaxy." "You're suggesting we become conquerors like them?" one representative asked. "No," Peter replied firmly. "I'm suggesting we become explorers, traders, and yes, warriors when necessary. We've learned how to build ships that can cross the stars. We've learned how to fight enemies we never imagined. We can't unlearn those things. The question is, what do we do with that knowledge?" The decision was made over the following weeks. Earth would reach out to the stars, not as conquerors but as a new player in galactic politics. The ships that had been built for war would be converted for exploration. Colonies would be established on Mars and the moons of Jupiter. Humanity would become a spacefaring species. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Sword of Terra, looking down at Earth. The blue planet seemed small and fragile from this distance, but he knew better. Earth was strong. Its people were strong. They had proven that. Nicole joined him at the window. "What are you thinking about?" "The future," Jake said. 3 months ago, I was a test pilot working on classified projects. Now I'm commanding a warship and planning expeditions to other star systems. It's strange how fast things change. Do you regret it? Any of it?" Jake thought about the pilots who had died under his command, the friends he had lost, the innocence that humanity could never get back. "I regret that it was necessary. But no, I don't regret fighting. Someone had to, and now we make sure it meant something. We build something worth protecting. We become something the Velkar will remember, not because of what they did to us, but because of what we became despite it." Across the fleet, similar conversations were happening. People who had been ordinary citizens were now veterans of the First Interstellar War. They had seen death and destruction, had lost friends and family, but they had also discovered something about themselves. When pushed to the edge, when faced with extinction, humanity didn't surrender. They fought back with everything they had. The morning sky over Sydney was clear and blue when the first ship appeared. It was massive, blocking out the sun like a second moon. Within seconds, more ships materialized over every major city on Earth. Nobody knew where they came from. Nobody understood what they wanted. Not yet. Commander Zalen stood on the bridge of his warship looking down at the blue planet below. He had done this dozens of times before. Find a primitive world, show them power, watch them surrender. It was always the same pattern. These humans would be no different. He pressed a button on his console. The weapon systems came online with a hum that vibrated through the entire ship. Around him, his crew worked in silence. They were Velkar warriors, members of the Dominion that ruled 47 star systems. One more planet was nothing special to them. "Fire the first strike," Zaylan ordered. The weapons officer nodded and activated the bombardment sequence. Energy beams shot down from orbit, moving faster than any human eye could track. They hit Melbourne first. The entire city center vanished in a flash of white light. Buildings that had stood for centuries turned to dust in seconds. Millions of people died before they even knew they were under attack. Mumbai was next. Then Mexico City. Then Jakarta. The alien ships moved with terrible efficiency, destroying population centers one after another. They weren't trying to conquer. They were sending a message written in fire and death. In a military base deep under the Colorado mountains, General Peter Grant watched the destruction on multiple screens. Each one showed another city burning. Each one showed millions of lives ending. His hands gripped the edge of the console so hard his knuckles turned white. "Sir, all conventional weapons have failed," the young officer said. Her name was Amy, and her voice shook as she spoke. "The missiles can't penetrate their shields. Our jets explode before they get close. Nuclear weapons don't even scratch them." Peter didn't respond immediately. He was thinking, calculating, trying to find some weakness in an enemy that seemed invincible. Then a new screen flickered to life. An alien face appeared, reptilian and cold. "Humans of Earth," Zaylan said through the transmission. His words were translated by their computers, coming out in perfect English. "Your world belongs to the Velkar Dominion now. You have 12 hours to surrender completely. Serve us and live. Fight us and die. Choose wisely." The screen went black. The command center fell silent except for the sound of distant alarms and the quiet sobbing of someone who had just lost their family. Peter straightened up. He was old, almost 70, with gray hair and a face marked by too many wars. But his eyes were still sharp, still burning with something that wouldn't die. He picked up a phone that connected to secure lines across the planet. "This is General Grant. Get me everyone. The president, the Chinese premier, the Russian president, everyone's still alive. And someone find Colonel Jake Morrison. Tell him it's time." Amy looked confused. "The pilot, sir?" "No," Peter said quietly. "The one who works on the secret project in Nevada. The one nobody talks about. 5 years ago, something had crashed in the desert. It wasn't a weather balloon or a satellite. It was a probe from another world, damaged and dying. The government had taken it apart, studied it, learned from it. Most people thought the Prometheus project was just rumors and conspiracy theories. They were wrong. Dr. Lisa Hayes had been working on the project since the beginning. She was in her underground lab when the invasion started, watching the same terrible news as everyone else. But while others saw only death and destruction, Lisa saw something else. She saw that their technology worked. The lab doors burst open and Jake Morrison ran in. He was young for a colonel, only 35, with dark hair and eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. He had been chosen for the Prometheus project because of his test scores and his ability to think clearly under pressure. Today, both would be tested. "Doc," he said, breathing hard from running. "Tell me we have something, anything." Lisa pulled up schematics on her main screen. "The slipstream drives work. The weapons work. Everything we built from the alien technology is ready. The problem is the pilots. Why, what about them? The neural interface is difficult. It connects directly to the brain. Most test pilots couldn't handle it. They passed out or got sick. We need people with the right kind of mind, the right kind of reflexes." Jake looked at the fighter ship on the screen. It was sleek and dangerous, nothing like the jets he had flown before. It looked alien because it was built from alien knowledge. "How many do we have?" 6 ships ready now. More coming online every hour. But Jake, these aren't tested properly. We don't know if they'll survive real combat." "We don't have a choice," Jake said. He walked to the window that looked into the construction bay. 6 ships sat there, dark and waiting. "Get me 5 other pilots. The best you can find. We launch in 8 hours. "That's before the deadline." "Exactly." Jake turned back to her. "They think we're helpless. They think we're going to beg and surrender. Let's surprise them." Around the world, the same conversation was happening in different languages. Underground factories that had been making cars and computers were being converted to make weapons. Scientists who had been working on peaceful projects were now designing ways to kill. Soldiers who had been enemies yesterday were now allies. The Velkar had made a critical mistake. They had united humanity. Every nation, every religion, every political system that had been fighting each other for thousands of years suddenly had a common enemy. And humans were very, very good at killing enemies. In Beijing, military leaders worked with their best engineers to understand the weapon designs being shared from America. In Moscow, generals who had spent decades planning wars against the West were now planning wars alongside them. In London, Paris, Tokyo, Delhi, everywhere that had survived the first attack, people prepared. The 12-hour deadline approached. President Helen Carter stood in front of cameras that would broadcast to every screen on Earth and every alien ship in orbit. She was young for a president, only 50, but the last day had aged her years. Behind her stood representatives from every surviving nation. She spoke clearly, her voice carrying across the planet and up into space where the Velkar waited. You came to our world uninvited. You murdered millions of innocent people. You demanded our surrender. Here is our answer. She paused, and in that pause, billions of humans held their breath. No. One word. Simple and final. The transmission ended. In orbit, Commander Zalen watched the human response with surprise, then anger, then cold satisfaction. So they choose death, he said to his crew. Very well. Begin the second bombardment. This time we don't stop until they beg. But deep under the Nevada desert, Jake Morrison was strapping into the cockpit of the Valkyrie fighter. The neural interface crown settled onto his head, cold metal against his skin. Then his mind expanded, reaching out, connecting with the ship until he couldn't tell where he ended and the machine began. Neural sync at 87%. Lisa's voice said through the speakers. That's the highest we've ever recorded. Jake didn't respond with words. He didn't need to. He could feel the ship's weapons, its engines, its shields. He could feel the exotic matter reactor humming with barely controlled power. And he could feel something else. Anger. Pure, burning anger at what had been done to his world. All pilots report ready, Lisa continued. Launch bay doors opening. Through his connection to the ship, Jake sensed the 5 other pilots going through the same process. Nicole, Chris, Frank, Danny, Sophie. They were all ready. They were all angry. Valkyrie Squadron, Jake said, his voice calm despite the fire in his chest. Time to show these aliens what humans do when someone hurts our family. Launch in 3, 2, 1. The 6 fighters shot upward on pillars of blue light, accelerating so fast they would have killed normal pilots. But the neural interface and the alien technology kept them alive and conscious as they broke through the atmosphere in seconds. Above them, the Velkar fleet waited in orbit, massive and seemingly invincible. 40 warships hung in the darkness of space, their weapons powered up and ready to continue the bombardment. They had no idea what was coming for them.